All right, we're back, and it's COMP397, and it's week 8, lesson 8, part 2, and we're doing our broadcast. Now we're going to do the build, and I had a friend of ours here ask me, hey, I'm trying to compile in TypeScript, it's not working. I tried my best, it's not working in Visual Studio Code. So let's do that. We had our last week, we kind of did Visual Studio Code with our mail pilot build, right? And I used this COMP397 mail pilot demo where we started building our base scripts and everything else. We didn't really get to it. Right now, and again, I'm using the code that I got from our game. We have our scripts. We have some stuff in here. We have a config script, a core script, an object script, some states where we use our state machines, states or scenes, if you will, and some typings that we added in here to make sure that we're good to go, right? That's what we've done so far, right? So this is our kind of our project that we've been using to kick off with, and we've copied and kind of copied our code and everything else to make it go. Okay, so a couple things you need. First of all, let's pull up our Visual Studio Code and see what we've got so far. Okay, I think these are important pieces. So here's our VS Code. Hey, that sound is gone. And let's pull in this this folder, which is COMP397 mail pilot, right? So we're just going to pull it over here. If you notice right now, what we have is the exact same setup for our template. Nothing's changed, right? We have this tsconfig file. You need the tsconfig file. If you don't have it, what ends up happening is you can't compile. It won't know what to do. You need your ES5, and we point to common.js, and your source map is true, just so that produces the source maps. Notice that in our scripts right now, when I look at things like our core script, which is our game, we have a source map because we've changed a couple things, right? That was produced by what we did here. I also have, under VS Code, I have this tasks, a task runner that I've created, and I have to make sure, the one thing I need to do here is make sure that it's got args, there's nothing in between the args in here because it starts off with hello world. We want to get rid of this. We want to have args with this right here. Now there are some differences when it comes to this. I'm using a non-Windows machine. If you're using a Windows machine, there are additional things you may have to do because, for example, TSC may not be a shell command, right, for you, and that's what may cause something for Windows. So there is, if you actually look up how to install for Windows, so let's do that together because I think it's important for us to get that going. So via Visual Studio Code, TypeScript with Windows, right? I think it's important to kind of understand how to put that together. So there are some documentation. There's some documentation on how to set your tsconfig up. Notice how they're talking about AMD, right? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that you go with common.js as the module, right? And source maps. I turn source maps on. Transpiling, they give you an example of something you're going to transpile here. Create a simple TS file and then transpile. When you choose your task runner, right? So again, shift and you want to configure the task runner and then press enter. Basically, what you want to do is this will create a simple task.json file in the VS Code folder. That's what it tells you to do. And then what it does is you need these things. Take a look at what you get. You get this version and then hello world and blah blah. Right? It says if you don't have the TypeScript compiler installed, you can get it here, which is the typescriptlang.org. And then you're going to build your task runner. Now, right now, it shows up with a list of hello world.js. But what you want to do is you want to change all this stuff so it works with Windows. Now, there's another change here that you have to add in to make sure that you're like one of the build issues you might have is, hey, it doesn't exist in when you type console. Like when you actually go in and type in the TSC, it's not part of your. It's not, the task runner doesn't work, right? So there is a fix for Windows, and I'm trying to figure out. I remember how it is. I remember I ran into the same issue sometimes when trying to do this. I'm wondering if it's further down. Because I think one of the challenges that they had when they first came up with this was that the task runner doesn't work properly if you just let it be configured the way it is. And I think they made some changes here. Here it is. Take a look at this screen here, right? So I'll kind of magnify this so you guys can see this. So if you notice here, what they do is they say this. This is what you need to change. So this is the task runner. You say under Windows, use TSC minus exe, and this ensures we don't need a shell, which is true, right? So you go show output, and then what you do is underneath here, you add another thing that says Windows command TSC, right? And what this does is it changes things a little bit for Windows so the task runner works, okay? And that's typically the stuff that is an issue when you try and run your build. Okay, so that's it right there. Windows, and then it's a little object that you put in your task runner for your build. Now you don't need that if you're using a Mac. The other thing that you want to do is sometimes you may want to create a shortcut keys, which you can totally outline for what happens when you press two keys. Example: if you want to press save, once you press the save button, it automatically transpiles your stuff. Instead of like this is how Visual Studio works, right? You can actually configure that by configuring what you do with your buttons. So if you press command, kind of Control or Command Shift and S, Shift S, or Command, or let's say Control S for save, it also transpiles at the same time. And you can listen for that if you set up a buttons to compile and save or transpile and save, right? And there's all kinds of wonderful little tutorials online on how to do that, right? And see what it says, automatically compile your TypeScript files with Visual Studio Code, right? And there's a whole tutorial on how to do this, right? So it talks about the split screen. You can we're gonna use the split screen today, so you can see both sides. And it also says navigate to your Visual Studio Code folder and open a terminal window here and enter the following command: tsc star.ts and then -- watch. And what this does is it watches for any changes and automatically transpiles it in the thing. That's one way of doing it for sure, right? So TSC does help us do that kind of stuff. But you can also, again, use Control S and then set up your hotkeys in order for you to do that as well. Okay, so some really cool stuff. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff that's really cool with Visual Studio Code. It is a little raw compared to Visual Studio. Visual Studio is easier to do. We're going to try and do it with this, for this part, okay? All right, so again, if you notice, that's the one piece. So I've got my command. Instead of command, I need Windows command, that other piece that makes it Windows. So it uses tsc.exe as opposed to tsc on the shell. Yeah. Okay, we'll come over we'll do another break, and I'll come over and check you out on the break and fix it. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple things we have to do there. Next, once we've got this working, we've got to actually take a look and see if this thing runs, right? So again, there's a couple ways to do that. I can run. First of all, let's go over here. Remember that in Visual Studio Code, if I right-click in my sidebar, anywhere in my sidebar, right-click here, and then I go Open in Terminal right away. It takes me to the location for my files, right? So there's my location of all my working files. Here it is. Here's where I can, if I was going to download and install that little runner, right, that HTTP code, I would go npm install -g, and it would be http-server. That's the one you want to install in with npm. Now remember we talked about you have to install node, and then from there you have to use npm to do that. And you have to have sometimes on the Mac you have to use administrative rights to do that, depending on how you install the node. So you'd have to go sudo npm install -g HTTP server, right? Now on the PC you wouldn't have to use a sudo, but you would do this. Once you've installed your HTTP server, it's a little server that runs in the background for testing. So you just type it in, and it has to be in the folder that you're running in. So http-server, and then what it does on its own, it just runs the server in the background like this. So now if I go to localhost 8080, I should be able to see my files running. So let's try that out. So I'm going to go here and go localhost 8080, and then if I'm right, I got my game start going on. There it is, right? And I can click my game start, and I can see I hear my mooing sound first. It says yay, and I can go next to my game over screen or back to my game start screen. Yeah. So this state machine is working properly. We've got it going, and it's inside this thing. This is the first piece that we're going to do. Yeah.
I got authentication of the card.
For HTTP server?
Yeah, and it's using them. And password,
There's no username and password for me, so it must be something to do with the way you're doing it, buddy. Well, are you doing it on the machine in front of you or your laptop?
My own machine.
All right, let's get together afterwards, and I'll show you how to do it, because obviously, you know, we have to do some work. Okay, so this is the first piece. The first piece is getting yourself all set up and ready to go, which we've already done last week. I just wanted to recap it with you. Notice how I get some reports back from the console about how my game is running in an HTTP server. And you need one a lot of times, because if you don't have an HTTP server, you get these scripting errors. It's a security problem, especially in Chrome, where it doesn't understand how to run things. We're also going to deploy this live to Azure, right? And we're going to do that through GitHub, a GitHub continuous deployment as one way we're going to do it, right? So if I was going to set this up, let's set it up for now, right now, for GitHub continuous deployment. So again, I'm going to go into Microsoft Azure. Now my Azure looks like this. I go to Azure websites, again, manage.azurewebsites.net. There it is, windowsazure.com. And it takes me into this screen here. I love it. Sign out. Let's make sure I sign back in. Sign in. And I want to sign in with my my ID, right, for a second. Sorry, it does take a little bit of time if I haven't signed in properly. All right, and let's see if my everything is expired. Sometimes what happens is Azure expires on me after a while, which is totally cool and totally expected. Okay, cool. So I've got a couple things still going. I want to install some stuff here for Azure, right? And I got a lot of stuff going on. I got one little virtual machine running right now. Is it running or did it stop? There he goes. Oh, thank God. Virtual machine really kill you when it comes to your pay-as-you-go and your Azure Pass, right? And all my Azure Pass should be pretty much stopped right now. In fact, let's just stop all my Azure Passes, because if I don't stop my Azure Pass, then what happens is it keeps on. Look, I got credit status. I got 5 days remaining till my credit expires, and it says I got $8 left, right? Because it kind of eats my credits for a while, the ones I've got running right now. And I've got my to-dos that's also running, and some other things that kind of eat your credits up every month. Okay, so I've got these 9 web apps, but I want to create one that uses my GitHub repository for me. And if you noticed last time what we did, let's just go in there. If I go to GitHub, the first thing you need to do, if I go to Centennial College here, right under GitHub, I want to create a continuous deployment, right? And last day we were together, we did this mail pilot demo through COMP397. Take a look, guys. 397 mail pilot demo, right? That was done 7 days ago exactly, right? So this is what I want to deploy right here. I want to deploy this one on Azure. Now, there's 2 portals for this. There's the old portal, it looks like this, and there's the new portal, right? And that you have to go, if you want to go to the new portal, I believe it's portal.azure.com. And if you're logged in properly with your own credentials, if you go in, you see a view like this, right? And it's going to show you, by the way, this in the middle, your subscriptions. It tells you your forecast your expenses for the month for your particular subscription, right? And it shows you what you're going to be paying if you're going to use this for real, okay? So I've got a bunch of stuff that's stopped. I got one app that's kind of been running for another course. But let me put together my deployment. So first, I need to create a web app. So I click on web app. Now this, you have to have your student pass for Azure working, okay, in order for you to get this done. So I'm going to click web apps. I want to click a new or create a new web app here. I'm using the new portal, all right? So now, again, there's different options. One is pay-as-you-go. The other one is Azure Pass. Let's make it an Azure Pass because I got a little bit of money left on that, right? Why not? And here's my web app, okay? So what am I going to call this thing? I want to call it something that's original. So I'm going to call it the name of our course. So COMP397 Mail Pilot Demo, one of those. Let's try this out. So it has to be an original across the domain, right? So COMP397, even that's taken, as an example, Mail Pilot, that's probably available. But I'll do a demo like this, right? So just make it so it's a demo for us, so I can take up that name. All right. Our resource group is East US or whatever, and it says app service plan location. All that's the same. I'm going to just create my object, and what it does is it starts deploying. It starts starting it off and creates the container for what we're going to use for our web app. Again, I'm setting all this up ahead of time before I start development of my app. Why? I can see the development happen live, right? When we do this, when we do continuous deployment. Okay. It's doing its stuff. You notice it's deploying the web app. It's kind of working its way. It's magic, right? And once I finish deploying my web app, what I want to do is go back in here and then click on continuous deployment through GitHub. Hey, there it is. Take a look. My deployment succeeded. All right, let's do it. So if you notice, here's my web app. It's called COMP397 Mail Pilot Demo. There's nothing there right now. If you actually were to go there, there's nothing there. So I got to click down here where it says, continuous deployment. See that? If I click continuous deployment, I get an option to configure the required settings. If I click this, it's going to say, how do I want to continuous deploy? I want to do it through my GitHub. All right, that's how I want to do it. So every time I upload to GitHub, it's going to redeploy to the server, right? So that's the first thing. Okay, cool. This is the one. I kind of give my authorization if I want to. Here it is. It's the same one. I can choose my organization. It's going to be under Centennial College, right? And then it's going to ask me, hey, which of these organizations, the files, do I want to use, kind of thing. So configure, choose your project. So I want to choose, obviously, COMP397 Mail Pilot Demo somewhere in here, wherever it decides to be, right, on this thing. There it is. Once I've got that piece, I can click OK. So it kind of ties into GitHub, and then it sets up continuous deployment. And now we should see that these little silly screens that we had before when it's done, right? You have to wait for it to be done. See up here, it's still working, even though it says no deployments found. It's going to eventually be done like this, and then it'll update. So give it a chance, because sometimes it takes a little bit of time for us to do that. If I go back to deployment credentials, that's one. I can change that if I want to. And if it doesn't work, let's just sync it up. Synchronize my source control. I'll press yes. If it doesn't work, and if it says no deployments found, that's a problem. That means that something didn't work out the way it should have, right? Let's take a look at deployment slots. It says make sure you're running with a standard or premium plan before adding a slot. I only have one, right? And again, I want to make sure that it's working. So the way to do that, of course, is to test it. Now it says deployments, it worked out, but I don't see how that worked out with an error. Well, it did somehow. There we go. So this is live now. So if you actually go on Azure, if you go to COMP397 Mail Pilot Demo.azurewebsites.net, you'll see this.
Yay.
Right?
Yay.
This little app that we made. Right? So now, if I change anything on GitHub, it'll automatically deploy to my app on Azure right away. It's live right away. So this is how I want you to work. So that way, you don't have to worry about being live. Now, there's a good thing and bad thing about doing this. The good thing is you're live right away when you're done. The bad thing is if you make a mistake, you're down. And if you upload to GitHub and you made a mistake, so it's a broken copy of it, it'll break on live as well, right? And that's why people have deployment slots. So if you have deployment slots, you can switch deployment slots. You have one that's live, that's ready to go. You deploy to another slot, as an example, that's used as a staging slot, and then what you do is you swap them. So when you know you're ready to go, you swap the slots, and then it goes live with a working copy. For now, for us, this is okay. Okay, so we've got this working. That's good. And we've got all our prep going. Now let's actually build something finally, okay? So remember, what we want to do with MailPilot is we have a couple of classes we need to use. So we need to go back. What am I building? I'm building that side scroller game. And I need some assets, because right now all of our assets are just my back button, my next button, and my start button. That's bad. So let's get those assets in play. And I have some MailPilot assets that I used before. It's called MP Assets, and I think I might even have them online for you that you can download. But let's just make sure that I don't have them on here. Here it is. Here's MP Assets. But let me just put them up on GitHub for you so you can download them from GitHub. Right. So what do these assets include? These MP Assets. It includes my engine sound. It includes my thunder sound. It includes the yay sound. It also includes some sprites: a cloud sprite, an island sprite, an ocean sprite, a plane sprite, and some other plane sprites. On MP Assets, yeah, you can always go to. Is it on Centennial? If you go to centennialcollege.com, GitHub.com/Centennial College, Let's go there. So we'll go to this one. I'll use another slot for this. So GitHub, and we'll hit Centennial College again. Right, there's Centennial College. If you go there and you look at, if you want to search for MP assets, right, then you'll see it. Here it is, Centennial College MP assets, right? It gives you all your sprites that you need for the game. So grab those from there, please. Don't wait for me to do them. So you can kind of start the build with me. I've already done this. I've got them locally, right? So I'm going to pull these assets into our game, and I'm going to do that by pulling up our game in the operating system now. Here's my COMP397 mail pilot, and I'm going to pull them into the game. So I'm going to kind of go into assets and images, and you notice I've got all these buttons, and I'm going to go back in here and grab these buttons here, cloud, island, and ocean, and all this kind of stuff, and I'm going to pull them into here as well, like this. Actually, I'm going to kind of copy and paste, undo. Let's copy and paste, because if I'm not careful on the Mac, it'll just drag and drop them, right? So, all right, so copy and then paste. There we go. Okay, so there's our assets added in there, and I also want a couple things, a font that I'm going to be using, which is this Docs51. I already have that there, and my audio, which I already have, Engine, Thunder, Yay, and blah, 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 all those things are there. Okay, so I've got my assets. I just added my Sprite assets. Let's upload to GitHub. Notice, last day, we were doing everything from command line, but on the left, you notice there's a GitHub link here in VS Code. Let's click that. Look at what it's done for us. It said that all these assets are untracked, right? You see that? On the left, when I click GitHub in VS Code, I see a bunch of assets that are untracked. I want to add all these assets to the, up into the staging area for Git. So I'm just going to click on the plus sign next to them all, like this. Plus, 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 plus. Now all these assets are included in the staging area of Git, and I got to kind of put a message, a commit that says added Sprite assets, something like that. There we go, added Sprite assets. And let's check out how this works. If I click this checkbox, right, it adds them into the staging area. And now, if I click the ellipses, right here, and if I go to push, right here, then what it's going to do is it's going to push it to GitHub Live. So it's going to take its time, connect to GitHub, and push it. Now, because it pushed it to GitHub, I have a second deployment. So if I go back to Azure, right, and if I want to look at continuous deployment, you can see that if I have a deployment in there, and there's a deployment slot, take a look at this. I have added Sprite assets as my second deployment, so it's already live. My new assets are up. Now they're not doing anything, they're just sitting there. But once I push to GitHub, it changed the deployment right on Azure right away, directly, right? So that's kind of the flow, the workflow we want to do, right? When we push up something up to GitHub, it deploys directly into Azure and it's live. Okay, cool. So we've got access to assets. We're ready to go. I need to change the asset manager that we put together, and let me just go into that, because right now, from a content perspective, we're good to go. Right? Here's my content. For my game and my reset and all that stuff is ready to go. My assets are there, and now in my scripts I have my config, my core, my lib from all my libraries, my objects that I have in here. So these are all my objects. I've got a button, a label, and a scene asset, and so on. I don't have a game object. Now we already built all that. Remember the last time we got together with Slot Machine? We built a game object. I want to kind of do that, but I want to build it again one more time from scratch for you guys, right? So first, in objects, I want to build a new TS class. Let's do that. So I'm going to right-click on objects, a new file. Here we go for the first time. We're doing it in Visual Studio Code. And we're going to make this class called, we're going to make our plane first. Okay, so the first object we're going to make is the plane. Plane.ts. And my plane. Okay, what do I need for my plane? Well, first of all, my plane is going to be a sprite, right? I know that. For now, we don't have any sprites in this version of our mail pilot demo. We have bitmaps. And remember what we did with our sprites. So I have my placeholder for my plane. I'm not saving it yet. I'm putting it there. But I want to get this GameObject class for the very first time. And the way we're going to do that is create another file in my objects, right? So we're going to go back to objects, right-click, new file, right? And we're going to call this one GameObject. because I don't want to kind of make our game object from scratch. And I'm also going to update our asset manager, our asset tracker, if you will, because our asset manager right now still uses the old assets. We've kind of done this with Slot Machine once before, right? So in our game object, we want to do two things. Module, let's start typing. Module objects, right? That's our module, right? Oh, you know what? We have to make sure we rename this thing to GameObject.ts, or else it's not going to be correct. There we go. Yeah, save. So module objects is the one thing we want to put in there, and then inside the module objects, we want to put in these curly braces. Let's do one more thing that makes TypeScript really cool to use with Visual Studio. I want to open up a split screen, right? So I'm going to do split screen. And so I want to have both these things working in tandem here. And I want to close this one down. I don't need this one right now, so just give us a little bit more room. So we're going to work like this. Okay, so we've got our game TS here, and I want to look at the game JS on this side. So let's just look at that. So I'm going to click on here, and I haven't done it yet, but I want to transpile right now. So I'm going to go here and go Command-Shift-B, right, which transpiles everything. It does the work. And if I go back to this, right, and if I look at, I have to click on this side. If I click GameObject.js, I see this, because nothing really has been done yet. There's nothing there, just the module objects, right? Notice? Let me just close this up. So every time we transpile, we're going to see the result here in GameObject.js, okay? Just like we did split screen in Visual Studio. All right, so what do we need for our game? We need, first of all, let's make some comments. Let's say class GameObject. That's what it is, the GameObject class, right? So we're going to say class, here it is. And we're going to call this game with a capital G, object with a capital O, right? And we're going to add those curly braces in place, right? We're going to save, and we're going to press Command-Shift-B on the Mac or Control-Shift-B on the PC. And when we do that, it's going to show us the transpile class on the right side, right? Because again, I'm doing split screen here, right? So this is what the actual JavaScript looks like that makes Steven go nuts, right? All right, so this is cool. GameObject class is probably what this should say. GameObject class. Okay, so in our GameObject, we need a constructor. And our GameObject is going to be a sprite. So we're going to say extends, right, create.js.sprite. That's what it does. So that's really what it is. We need a constructor for this object. We're going to say constructor, right? And what we want to take into our constructor, first of all, we have to have a superclass for this as well. When we have a constructor, and when we extend our sprite, create.js sprite, we need to send something over to our superclass. And if I hover over this thing for our superclass for our sprite, what do I need for my sprite? Well, it tells me what I need. I need a sprite sheet, right? As an example, that's one. And I also need if you notice here, it says a frame or animation, string, and number. So something to tell it what it is. Almost like our sprite string, or what it is. That's the name of our object, or object string, object name, or whatever you want to call it, right? So that's what the thing I need here. So I can't continue because I don't have a sprite sheet. So we need to create it, just like we did with. We're going to do that with our lovely friends. I'm just going to go here and put this together with Texture Packer. So here's Texture Packer, right? I'm going to pull this little thing up, and instead of going to Unity right now, I'm going to go back into Create.js, right? So I got to find the output for that one. And again, it's Easel and Create.js. If you notice, there's a bunch of different assets or different options here for this, right? But we need to create one for those. And again, it creates all of the assets and everything else we need. So here's Easel.js, Create.js. I'm going to use this one and create my project. Okay, here we go. So I've got my project, and I want to add the assets that I already have in my project. What am I not going to do is I'm not going to include my ocean. Okay, don't include the ocean right now in this texture packer. And the reason for that is because if you include your ocean, the bad thing about including your ocean is it's too big. Right? And it doesn't make sense as an image that we want to load in here, right? So let's do that. So we're going to go kind of into the operating system here. I'm going to go to desktop. I'm going to go to COMP397 Mailpilot demo, and I want to pull in the assets that we have. So I'm going to go into my images, and other than the ocean, my back button, not sure that I'll use that one for back button. My next button, not going to use that one, but my start button, since it's already made, might as well, right? So I'll use this one, the start button. I'll add in my my plane. Just the plain GIF, not the plain 1, 2, 3. I don't want to use that right now. I want to use that one, the island, and the cloud. Those 4 options here. Leave my back button alone, and my plain 1, 2, 3 in the ocean. So I'm just going to drag all those in here. What it does when I do that, new version of texture packs, blah, 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 blah. No, we'll install and quit. How about that? So this is what I got. I got my start button, which I already have, and I've got the plane, my cloud, and my little island, right? Okay, I'm going to save these things out to where it has to be, and I'm going to save them right back into my assets folder, right? So I'm going to say File. First of all, I'm going to save the project in there as well, so Save Project. And it's going to ask me, where do I want to save it? I'm going to put it right back in there. So I'm going to go to Desktop, and it's going to go to, again, COMP397 MailPilot Demo inside my Assets folder, inside my images. I'm going to save this project as MailPilot. Just call it MailPilot. So I can always go back in there and charge it up again, and click Save. All right, so it just keeps track of all this stuff. Notice how I'm using this. It's nice and everything else. It keeps track of all my different assets in one Sprite Sheet, right, that I did before. We did this before for our slot machine. Okay. Now let's export this. Let's actually publish. So I'm going to click Publish Sprite Sheet, and it's going to ask me, where do you want this stuff? Where I want to go again back to my little MailPilot demo. Inside my assets, inside my images is where I want everything to be exported. All right. And I want to call this thing just like last time. The JSON file should be called Atlas, right? And I'm going to click Save. It's going to export the JSON file and my atlas.ping file right in here, and press OK. Okay, cool. Let's go back and check this and see what it looks like in the operating system now. So I'm going to minimize this, and if you notice now I have atlas.ping, right? Which means here in my assets, right? If I go to assets, so I'm going to go back into, this is actually in Visual Studio Code. I go into my assets and my images. I should have my atlas.ping in here, right? So, and if I don't see it, what do? I can refresh, right? When I refresh, I see it all there now. Here's my atlas.ping, and I also have my atlas.json. This is cool because I can bring my atlas.json right in here, just like we did last time. But this atlas.ping is what we're going to use, all right? So let's fix my game.ts file, the first one. So let's go back to game.ts. I'll bring that up. And I won't split screen this yet, so I'm just going to kind of close this one off. I just wanted to show you how to do that. I have a manifest, but remember last time when we did this, my manifest is good, but it loads in buttons and everything else that I really don't want to load in here. I have the yay sound, which I'm going to need, and some other sounds I'm going to put in here. But I need to change this thing where it says preload. Instead of preloading just these things, I'm also going to preload some sprite sheets. So again, I redirect you back into the API documentation for this, right? So you can see how it's done. So if I go to Easel.js, and again, I'm doing this so that way it's also recorded. Right, so if I go to Easel.js and I look at the API docs for Easel.js, I want to look at the one for my Sprite. So I want to kind of scroll down here and I look at Sprite. And if you notice, it says var instance is equal to new create.js Sprite, instance.goTo and stop, because there's different Sprite things. This is cool. And under Sprite Sheet, which is what I want to do, right, you notice how it uses the Sprite Sheet and it gives you kind of a view of what it looks like and how to use it. And here's the code that you need. This is the example code. var data, remember we did this before, and then we add the Sprite Sheet in here as an example that we're going to add in. Okay, that means going back to my Visual Studio Code, I got to take the JSON file and I got to use it. So let me go back into my assets where I have my atlas.json file and double click. It opens it up here, and I can see that my atlas.json file only has a few frames right now, right? I don't need this piece, so I can rid myself of this and up to here, okay? Notice how it mentions all the assets that I need, my cloud, my island, my start button, and my plane. Those are the names of the assets that I'm going to be using in my animations. All right, so I've got this. In fact, I'm using this as a template, so I'm going to grab all this stuff, copy it, right? And I'm going to go back to my game.ts file, right, which is the one I'm working with right now. So here's game.ts, right? And I'm going to put that before my manifest. So this is my texture atlas. That's what it is, and it's the data piece of my texture atlas. So here in my global namespace, I'm going to say var data, right, is equal to, and if you notice the format back in our API, it's exactly what I have in here for my JSON file. So I'm going to say just Control V or Command V on the Mac for paste, and press my semicolon there in the back. So this is my data that I have for all my assets. These are the assets. Now if you notice, my atlas.ping file is in the wrong location. It's not pointing to the right place. It's pointing to Atlas on the main root. Well, it's not there. It's under assets images. So I got to put that in there as the same way. So I got to kind of point to it from where I'm at. So I'm going to go up one, up another one, and then down into assets, images, right? And then atlas.ping. So I need this path. Save. Okay, cool. So I've got that path, I've got the data. And now here in my preload method, after I load my manifest, I want to kind of do my Sprite Sheet stuff. So this is where my Sprite Sheet is configured. Just pull that up so you can see that. Sprite Sheet is configured down here. And I'm going to redirect you back to the code here. So I'm going to say, so var, whatever my Sprite Sheet's called, is equal to new create JS Sprite Sheet and pass in the data, right? So let's do that. So I'll say var. Now, here's a question for you. Do I want to create it here in my preload function? No, because I want to have access to these things later on, right? So I want to create this on the main scene here, in the main global framework variables up here, where it says not the game objects that are menu, game, and over, and these are my states objects, and not right where it says here, it says assets, and then load queue. I want to create something called my atlas, my texture atlas, right? So I'm going to kind of create it down here. So I say var atlas, right? And this atlas is of type create.js.spritesheet. By the way, this will change one day because we're going to make our own little assets class. We haven't done it yet. We will. We will extrapolate this later. And we'll say this is our asset, our atlas, our sprite atlas, or texture atlas, if you will. That's what it is. Okay, so we've got this. That's what we need, var atlas. And now what we're going to say is this. Under here, we're going to say atlas is equal to a new create.js.spritesheet, right? And we're going to pass in data. The data that's global here that we have. So there's our sprite sheet. Here's our assets. There's the sprite sheet right here, right? And now what we want to do is the next line, right, in our API documentation, which is our API is going to use the animation, whatever the animation is called, or the sprite. This is the new sprite, is equal to a new create.js sprite. We're going to pass in the sprite sheet and pass in the name of the sprite. So this is our sprite string, if you will, the name of our sprite, right? Or you want to call it the image string, which is also something that I use, right? We've already got this format. We don't need to do it here, right? We're going to do it in our GameObject. So let's go back to our GameObject, which is right here. So GameObject.ts, so let me bring that up for a second. Now we'll do the split screen so you can see what that looks like. And we'll look at GameObject.js there. So this is what it looks like right now. So what I want to pass into it is what? Well, we know it's our sprite sheet's called Atlas. And we want to pass in our image string. Well, we don't have an image string right now, but we're going to get it, right? We're going to get it from our constructor. So here's our constructor, right? And our image string is going to say the following. It's going to be one of these. It's going to say image string, and it's going to be of type string. Okay? And let's transpile to see that go well, right? So we're going to kind of do that, and then you get this, right? I love when I see that kind of stuff because it's just crazy, right? Ah. All right, knowing that we're going to have our object, our sprite object here, and it's going to be our plane, right? Let's go back to our plane for a second. So we're going to kind of doing things in parallel here. So let me bring up the plane. Here's our plane.ts, and let me bring up the plane.js, which was going to be kind of empty right now. So I'm going to kind of click on this side and click plane.js. We see the kind of cross mapping here, right? All right, and let's bring it up. So let me just take away this to give you guys more room to see, right? Notice how I have 12 changes on in my local repository here. 12 things I've done, right? Okay, let's add this in. So my plane.ts is going to be the same thing. Module, objects, it's in the same module, and we're going to say this is our plane class, right? And it's going to be like this. Class, we're going to call it capital P plane, right? That's what it is. And it's going to extends not the sprite, but the game object. So it's going to be objects.GameObject, right? Hey, how come my game object's not coming up? because you normally would want to see it right here, right? Well, of course you can't extend this yet, Tom, and I'll show you why. I'll save this and transpile, so you see what that looks like, right? That's what we see so far. We need to extend GameObject, but GameObject's not available to us. So we might as well, since we're adding these two files, go into the index.html and add them in. If we don't add these two files in, index.html does not know about them. So let's do that. So we're going to go back to here. We're going to hit index.html. Again, this is all prep for this kind of stuff. And we're going to hit this index file down here. Here's index.html. It's the only HTML file here. We can kill the split screen for now. And we need to add this in. Now be very careful, because one thing I don't like about Visual Studio Code is it doesn't give you proper pathing. You have to put it in yourself, right? So notice how we have our label, our button, and our scene. And my game object should be probably a top level object underneath config. So this is probably where I want it. I'm going to kind of copy this little code here, copy and paste, and then change my scripts objects label to scripts objects GameObject.js. Okay, there it is. So it's added in. Now I need to take a reference to this GameObject.js file and put it into my game.ts file. So I'm going to go back to my game.ts file. And way at the top, I have some examples of some references that we used before. I want to kind of get another reference, and it's got to be, again, at a top level. It's definitely not going to be as high as config.ts, because we don't care about preload and all this other stuff we've got going. But above, definitely above label.ts. So we're just going to put that in there. So I'm going to copy this and put another reference and then space it down. We're doing it manually here, but that's what we do. And then instead of label.ts, we're going to put GameObject.ts, which is a reference to my GameObject. Okay, now I've saved everything. Let's get back into GameObject to see if we have, let's get back into plain.ts to see if we have access to GameObject. We should now. And if I try this, I'm going to kind of press Command-Shift-B to transpile everything, and that kind of links everything together. And then in here, I should have access to my GameObject. So I'm going to say objects.GameObject, and notice how I don't see it, GameObject. Because I should, right? It should be like this, object.GameObjects, right? That's what I want to extend. I want to see, I want my plane to extend objects.GameObject. Right now, the reason why it's not saying is it says there is no namespace that I've got in here. So, and I know why it's happening like this, by the way. For two reasons. One, we haven't added the plain.ts file into our things yet. And even our GameObject.ts, here's our GameObject.ts, right, which we've done. It's already saved and everything else. And we've linked it to our file and compiled and all that kind of stuff. And if I go back, let's take a look at some of the errors we got. So under scripts objects, let's take it's going to kind of take it here. Extends, class plane extends, objects.game extends, not extends, extends, objects.GameObject. But we can't access objects.GameObject. In fact, what can we see with objects.GameObject? Can we actually see the other ones? We have button and everything else there too. Let's take a look. Watch. Dot. We have button, label, and scene. How come I see those, but not my GameObject? Was that?
If we put export before the class, you can see it. Right.
The which?
Export in the.
Oh, export. Yeah, of course, because if we don't have that, that's exactly what I was going to. If we don't put export here, we can't see the game objects. We say export. Very good. And then we have to transpile. Can't do it without transpiling, right? Because we don't see anything unless we export it, right? Now when we go back to our plain.js, and if I say objects dot, now I see my GameObject class, which is good. This is what I want, right? I also want to export my plain class because we're going to use it, right? So I'm going to say export. Otherwise, we won't see that either, right? And let's do a split screen now. So I want to say on this side, I want to have my plain.js to see what it does for us, right? And we'll just get rid of some of this, and I'll transpile. So Command-Shift-B, Control-Shift-B on Windows machine. If you notice, what it does is it creates in here an IFI, right? Basically, an anonymous self-executing function that kind of runs right here. But it also creates a namespace. That's what the namespace is, objects. So here's our objects namespace. And what we're going to do is we're sharing objects.plain is equal to plain, right? So it actually shares plain as part of our objects namespace. That's what it's doing. It's actually adding it to the objects namespace. That's how it's done, right? Okay. So in our constructor for the plane then, right, we're not going to have to guess what it is, right, because we know what it is. Our constructor is there, and we also have to in our constructor, we need to call the superclass. Well, the superclass is our class we just created called GameObject, right? So we're going to pass in, and what it's looking for, look, is an image string. Take a look, image string string. Okay, so I need to pull in the image string, and the image string is called plane, right? That's what the image string is called. I don't have to make it up. I don't have to kind of get it from my manifest. It's part of my manifest right now because I made the data, right, in the JSON file. So once I put plane in here, that's what's going to be passed in. What this does is it creates a plain script, sprite. That's what it does. It doesn't do anything right now, but we're going to make it do stuff. One thing I need from my plane is my update. And you know what? We're going to need update, and we're going to need a bunch of stuff like that all over and over again. Update, reset, all kinds of stuff. So let's put that in here as part of my class, right? My update function, because I need an update function, right, for my plane. My plane is going to have an update function. Well, hold on. Wouldn't my game, all my game objects would then need an update function? If I'm going to make a generic game object, right, I might as well include it so that my plane doesn't have to do it. So let's use the split screen instead of looking at this junk here that looks like JavaScript as an example with this stuff. Instead of doing it this way, let's instead look at the GameObject class we can add to as we go, right? So I'm going to kind of pull this open, and we'll click on this, and then click on the GameObject.ts on the side. So this is what we're seeing on the side. So this is our GameObject.ts. So if I need an update, and all of my objects need an update, I could certainly create it there, right? Because inside my update method, I have it. It's part of my class, right? Remember, this is also an abstract class that I'm creating. I'm never going to make a GameObject object. I'm always using it for later on, right? One thing I need in all of my objects is the ability because we're making sprites, I want the registration value for the sprite to be right in the middle, right? So I want to add that here into my GameObject so that all objects have it, including my plane class. So let's do that. So I'm going to go in here, and inside my my constructor, right, of my superclass, I want to create this registration value. So I'm going to say, first of all, I want to define a couple of instance variables here, right? So I'm going to do that before the constructor. So here are these private instance variables. Now you can make them private, you can make them public, you can make them protected. What should I make them? Protected, right? So I want to have access to them in the plane, but I don't want anyone else to have access to them outside. Because I don't need them to know the width and the height and all that stuff for now. So I'm going to say protected. So, sorry, protected instance variables. Because I can pass them down to subclasses, right? Bear with me while I construct this for you so you see it for the first time. So I say protected. That's our access modifier. And it's going to be the first one is going to be called width, right? It's going to be of type number because it's going to have a number, right? The next one, protected. And we need to make it a height for the plane too, height and width. And it's going to be a number, right? So width and height for the plane, right? And we're going to have other ones. For now, this is a good starting point, right? This is our constructor. You can have more than one constructor. You can still overload and do all that lovely stuff that we normally see us doing. Here in the constructor, we're going to mention this as, here's the constructor. Do I need to put in width and height? Well, no, because they already exist as protected. So I should be able to do something like this. In my constructor, I should be able to say something like, and if I first of all, I got to transpile, right? It's very important. I could be able to do something like this dot width, and notice how it comes up, right? And look how it also comes up as property objects GameObject.width. That's what this is. That's what the width is. I have access to my width because I've made it protected, so it's available here in my class. I could make this underscore width because it's something that's not available outside of my class. It's only available to my class and my subclasses. So it's probably a good practice to do that. So I'll say underscore width. Underscore is a good best practice to let us know it's private or protected, right? And we're going to do this now. We're going to say inside the constructor in the game object, we're going to say this dot underscore width, right, is equal to what? It's going to be this dot get bounds, right? Which is the thing dot width, and this dot underscore height, right, is equal to this dot get bounds, right, dot height. So we define what this is right away, right? So whatever my height and width is, I get it here. I set it up in my constructor object. Okay, let's go back. I want to transpile and see what I get now. So I want to kind of transpile, and when I come back to here, and if I say this dot underscore height, I see that I have access to it. That it's a number that is coming from my GameObject dot height property. Right? See, it's all there. It's all. I'm just showing you the relation between the two. This is really beautiful in this way. All right, let's try keep going on this thing. So I also know that I want to get I have my width and my height, and I want half the width and half the height to be my registration point, my anchor point for my sprite, right? Like we've done before. So I'm going to say this dot regex. It's a global property for the sprite class. It's the inherited property. Is equal to this, right? Dot underscore width, right? Times 0.5. And I say this reg y then is equal to this dot underscore height, right, times 0.5. So I'm creating my classes and objects kind of from the get-go, right? Now I have access to this information here, and I don't have to do that here in my constructor. Okay. I also know that my plane is going to have a fixed width, and I'm also going to have to, I don't have a reset function, but I want to move it around, right? So I want to move my plane around to the left and to the right. So I know on update, I want to check to see where my plane is and move it to the left and to the right, right? So if I add it to the screen, I add my plane to the screen, it's going to be added somewhere, and I want to be added. I want this plane to be added in a specific location, right? So I want my y property in my constructor, my y location, which is down the screen. All right, so I'm going to say this dot y, which is my y location. I want this to be equal to 430. Now you may say, where the hell did you get 430? I've tested this many times. That's how I know it's 430, right? And what this is going to do is put this plane at the specific location on the screen. And I also want that on update, I want to update the x location, so it's going to be dependent on my mouse x location. So I want to say on update, I want to say this dot x then on update is equal to, if I go to like this, let me just try this out here. So remember that we have our stage, right? So we're going to say our global stage dot mouse x, right, is what it's going to be. So whatever our mouse x value is, that's where I want my x value to be every update. Every time I update, when I move my mouse around, I want this dot x to be part of my solution here. Looks pretty simple, right? Because I've added all this stuff in here, right, in this side. I can't put this update in here in this function because my update will be different every time. Every object that I create will be slightly different. I can't put my y in here because y and x is inherited from my superclass, right? Okay, cool. Let us do a couple things. Let's add my plane to my index.html. So I'm going to go back to here, click my index.html, because we didn't add my plane to my files, right, which is important for us to add in. So let's go do that. And let me just kill this for a second, right? So I need to add my plane.js file, which is under the objects. Now I definitely want to put it before my scene, before my scenes, and I'll put this in there like this. These are all my game scenes, right? This is where you're going to create your first level, second level, third level, all that stuff in here. I definitely want it to be underneath my scene, or sorry, my scene is going to know about my plane and my buttons, and my plane should probably know about my game object and maybe my button, my label, and config. So probably a good place to put it is right in here above my scene object. All right, so let's put that in there. So I'm going to say, I'm going to copy this button, use that as a template, and put that in here, and kind of do something like this. Scene, scripts, objects, and we'll call this plane.js. So that's the first step. Second step is we need to go to my game.ts file, which is here. And again, it'd be in the same location, just underneath button and above scene. So I'm going to put it right here, copy this one, and make a reference to the plane. We're going to call this thing plane.ts. Okay, so cool, we have it there. And now what I want to do is in my scene, that's in my game scene, I want to put my plane in place and take away my buttons, like those two buttons, like the going forward and coming back. I want to get rid of those buttons because I don't need that in my game, my core game scene. So let me just close this up, and I'm going to double click on my game scene, right, which is under, instead of core, it's going to be under, we've put it under states, right? So I'm going to go into states and look at my game.ts file. There it is. Here's my game state, right? Notice how I have a level and all this kind of stuff, all the same things that we got from our things, right? Now we notice we didn't make these private. We could totally make this private. I didn't do that. I mean, so far they're public, but they've been slated as private. And now if you notice under here, here's in my start method, which is like my constructor, I have my level label and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to add all that in there. All I need right now, I'm going to get rid of all these buttons. I don't need my any of these things here. All I need is my plane. So let's devise my plane. So that means that all these buttons and everything else are going to go bye-bye because I don't need them in my main scene. This is my main game scene. So bye-bye. Here I need something called plane, right? So I'm going to say this is going to be a private variable that I'm going to create called plane is equal to new, right? Objects dot plane. And we're not going to pass anything into the constructor because it has everything it needs. Right now we're going to make it private, so we're going to make this underscore plane. And in here, before we add this to the child, we're going to say, first we're going to define the plane. So we're going to say this dot underscore plane, right? Actually, we've done it up here. That's just, sorry, I did it wrong. I want to say one of these. Take that away. So this dot plane is equal to new objects dot plane. That just creates the object, but I haven't added it to my scene, right? I'm going to add it into the scene now. Let's do that. So we'll say this dot add child, and we'll say this dot underscore plane, which adds it as a child to the scene. Remember, our scene is just a container. That's all it is, right? And the container is now being added to the stage, right? Okay, we don't need these in our update method, right? We don't need these clickable functions. We're going to get rid of them all. So let me just undo that for a second, show you what I did. So I'm just getting rid of these additional functions because these private methods have nothing to do with my main game scene. So get rid of them. Okay, inside our pub update method then, we want to do this dot underscore plane dot update. Hey, how come I'm not getting this, my update method going on, right? How come my update method isn't registering, right? It's allowing me to do it, right? And it says it's of type any, right, my update. Well, okay, let's define it. First of all, let's go back and see what we've done with our plane. That's important. So if we go by plane.ts, notice how my update doesn't really define what it is, right? It's not public or private. I've exported my class, and I don't need to export my plane. I should return void, so my update doesn't return anything, right? And it should be, my update should be definitely public, right? Because my update should be public just to make sure that it knows that this is what my update does. Because I need to have access to my update outside of my scene. Okay, so let's just transpile everything to get that all clear, all in the clear, right? Now let's go back to my game.ts file in my states. Notice how it's there. So any, my plane, right? And I mentioned that my game is of type objects.plane, right? Which is good. And plane does include an update method. Okay. Shall we say that again? You're right. I didn't put in a type. So I said I need to put like this, and it has to be of type plane. That's why I'm not getting any code hinting. So I have to put objects dot underscore objects dot plane. Now if I go back down here and I see, let's take a look at this. I go update. Now I see that I get my update. I also get other things too. If I go dot, you see there's a bunch of other stuff that's available to me here. Get bounds and so on. I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is .update, which is what I want, right? So here's my update. Okay, it'll work the other way too, but this is the better way. And if you notice, it actually tells me the return type. Hey, what if I want better code hinting? How do I do that? Because I want to declare some other objects here. And you know what? I want to make Steven happy because he's just he's unhappy today. So I need to make it a little better. How do I do that? Let's go back to my plain.ts before I test this out. So here's my plain.ts class. And I want to kind of declare this as a public method. I want to give some updates. So I want to declare what this is. Well, there's some stuff that you can put in, right? That if you kind of do something like this, and add this stuff in here, right? And I put it above the plane, I can say something like this. I need in my plane, and I gotta kind of stick it right to the plane, like right next to the plane like this. This is the kind of code it has to be. So it's two stars, another star, and then the end star, right? Let's try that again. So I want to do one of these, well, like this. So down on my plane, I go 1, 2 stars. Notice how it adds in the extra closing bracket, right? The 2-star thing means that this is a method definition. So I can add in code hinting right here. Watch. Like I say something like update method for plain class, right? And this should be running every tick, right? So then I save this, and if I transpile, right? And if I go back to my game.ts file, and then I try and add in the update class, look what I get when I try and do this. Like say plain.update, and if I look at it, look what it tells me here. Update method for plain class. So I can actually, this is a really cool feature of the latest TypeScript. So it actually gives me what it is. I can define all the details of how to use my update method right on top of my update method. Yeah, man. So that's really cool, and it's great for documentation. You'll wow your friends and neighbors with this one, right? All right, so let's put that in. Update. Okay, so we should work now. As is, just like that. We've added a plane, right? We've added the x and y coordinates, mouse.x, right? Let's try this out, right? See what happens. So I'm going to run this thing. First, let's transpile everything again. Make sure that it's all good. We've done it. And I'm going to run it locally first. I'm not going to upload it to Azure yet, right? So here is our local host. I'm going to refresh. It's going to give me my game start. I click start. And then if you notice, I have this, my plane kind of going left and right. And it stops kind of in the middle here, right? Even when I try and go outside of the screen, it doesn't allow me to. How come? It's not in the screen. My mouse only responds to the screen, right? So even if I wanted to go off screen, I couldn't. But it does a pretty good job of moving left and right to follow my mouse, you know? So it's pretty good. So that's the first thing. So my plane is working, and it's at the right location. Notice it's right in the middle of my mouse pointer because my regex and res y values are centered around the middle of my width and my height. Okay? That's why it's working the way it is. Okay, cool. So we've got one piece. I think this is a great place to upload to GitHub because now we have this piece of functionality working. And I want to get rid of that yay sound. What the hell is that yay sound I'm getting, right? That's just not right, right? So let's go back to our game for a second. I get that because in my startup script here, if I go back to my game.ts, my class in my core, and down inside my stage, right? Whenever I move states to my in my menu, and I press the button, is in my menu state. So let's go and look at my states class, my states folder. In my menu state, my menu.ts, I have this, every time I click the start button, it makes the yay sound, which is right here. Create JS sound play yay, right? And I want to get rid of that. So I want to play the yay sound every time I start the game, right? That's bad, right? In my menu state, I definitely want to say, instead of my hello, my game start, I want to say mail pilot. So let's put that in, mail pilot, and kind of in caps. And I want to change my fonts to, instead of Consolas, I want to use another font. I will use it later, but for now, let's leave it as, you know, FF, like kind of that yellow, that mail pilot yellow, FFFF00 as the size, the type of font that I'm going to use for my mail pilot label, my hello label. And it won't be called hello label. Let's refactor this thing to mail pilot label, right? So like, you know, that's going to be our new label. So we're going to refactor, rename, right? So I'm renaming my symbol, right? Which I'm going to call underscore mail pilot label. That's what it's going to be. Our mail pilot label, right? This is on our menu, right? So it starts properly. We have our start button. That's correct. Everything's good there. And it's going to take us to our mail pilot game, right? So basically, this is going to be the mail pilot. I'm going to press save. And I'm going to transpile. Okay, let's test it right now and see that it works properly. So I'm going to go back into this and refresh. And now we have mail pilot and it's yellow. Now you might say, well, hold on, Tom, how come it's yellow? Why do you want it yellow? I want it yellow for a reason, right? So bear with me. This blue was going to probably have to change, this little start button here in a second too. I have to make a couple more changes here, all right? Just a couple more changes before we continue, because we're missing a couple things from my assets, right? And then I'll upload everything to GitHub. We have 19 changes here in GitHub. Take a look, right? We made a lot of little changes, right? But that's okay. One of them is, let's just collapse off for a second. One of them is if I go to my assets and in my audio, notice I have engine, thunder, and yay. And in my game.ts file in my my main game core, right? I have the following assets. I have my back button, my next button, and my start button. I don't need my back button and my next button. So let's get rid of those. I want to load those up. Doesn't make any sense. It's just my start button right now. And I also don't want to get my my yay is good, but I also want to add in a couple other ones. So let's kind of hit that and open this up. And then kind of put in a couple more things. I want my yay sound, my engine sound, and my thunder sound. So yay, engine, and thunder, right? So it's engine, thunder. I'm going to just type these out. So I'm going to add all my, finish adding all my assets. Engine sound for my plane, and my thunder sound. Right, there's my thunder sound, right? My engine, my thunder, and my yay. And I want to change also, I want to add in, let me get rid of this comma. I want to add in my, my ocean, because I don't have my ocean as a bitmap. So I'm going to kind of put that back in. Start button will change to ocean, if I spell it properly. And it's assets, images, ocean. If you notice where it is, just check it. Make sure it's correct. Atlas, images, and ocean.gif, not ping, right? Ocean.gif. So there is my ocean and everything else, my engine, my thunder sound, and my yay sound, right? So I've got all those things there. Okay, so I've got them all. Let's resave everything. So I'll recompile everything, right? And when I go back, let's test it again to make sure it doesn't crap out. So I start the game, and now I can play. No yay sound, right? There's still some problems, but I got a working version now that I can upload to Azure, right? So let's do that. Let's just refresh this, and let's go back to GitHub and add all those things in. So now I'm going to do this through the tool, right? So these are all the things I want, and if you notice, I can just see how the changes. I can just click these right over all the changes. So stage all instead of going each one by one. Now they're all staged, right? And I can add a message. This is how quick and easy GitHub is now. It's perfect, right? I can say we added plain class or object class and plain class. What we really did, object class and plain class. When we did that, we also did a couple other things. We could have added more commits, but that's okay. And then kind of hit that, and then go here, and then go push. What this does is it pushes to GitHub all those changes, and then if I go to Azure, let's see how fast it is. So I'm going to go just back to Azure here to this. This is my Azure website. So I'm going to refresh this to get the latest build. We're already there, and now we can play it live on Azure. So you can play it right now. Right? That's how fast it is. That's why it's so beautiful. Like this deployment, I do it here. I stage everything actually on GitHub, stage it locally, make sure it works, and throw it up on Azure, and it's ready to go. Right? So it's kind of a really neat thing. Now, MailPilot seems like it's pretty blue or pretty yellow there. And I think what I want to do now is get the ocean going, right? Because I want to get the ocean going below the plane, right? So let's do a couple things. Let's go back into our script here. And I still haven't wowed Steven yet today, so I'm going to try and do that too, right? Because, if I can wow him, then everything's good. All right. Let's go back in here and add another component called ocean, right? And what does our ocean do? Ocean is different than plane in that it doesn't just stay static, it moves all the time, right? And this is a good place to put it. So we go to objects, right? It also resets all the time. I'm going to reset my ocean over and over again, and we're going to talk about that in a second, how to do that. So I need to add another object in here, right? And I need to add another game object. So I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to add a new file, and we're going to call it ocean.ts, right? That's our object we're going to add in, an ocean object. The ocean object is not going to be of type GameObject because it's not a sprite. It's a bitmap that we're going to be using, right? That's the one bitmap that we have in the game that we're going to be using over and over again. All right, so we're going to say module objects, just like we did before, right? Open this up, and we're going to say export, just to start that off, class, and we're going to call this ocean with a capital O. Extends, we're still going to extend create.js.bitmap, right? That's what we're going to do there, right? And we're going to open this up. We're going to call the constructor, here's our constructor, right? And in the constructor, as an example, here, and we can put it inside, this is the ocean class. Ocean class. In the constructor, we want to get is the constructor function itself, right? And because our constructor, we're extending the create.js folder, we need to put in a call to the superclass, which also is going to tell you what we require. If you notice, we require an image URL, which is any. And remember what we did. We went to assets.getResult, and then we put the name of the object that we're getting in. So we're going to do that right now. We're going to say assets.getResult. And we're going to put in brackets the name of the asset, which is ocean. Like that. Because we know it's an ocean. Let's take a look. Let's go back to our, just for a second, into our game.ts file. And just to check that it's the right one. So we go back here and notice that ocean, lowercase o, is what we're using. That's important. Make sure that this ID matches what you're calling, right? Otherwise you'll be in trouble. Okay, so let's go back into our ocean.ts file, and in our ocean.ts file we have a couple things we want to do. We do not want to put the registration point in the middle. We want to keep it at the top left corner of the screen. Why? We need some further explanation for this for people who haven't seen this before, right? So I'm going to go into my assets, like physically on my machine, and I'm going to click open my ocean.gif with my favorite program, Fireworks, for this time, or you can use other programs as well, like Illustrator. When I open up the ocean like this, it looks like this, right? It's a big, long bitmap, right? On the left, you notice that it's 640 wide, so the size of our viewport, but 1440 tall, right? What does that mean? 1440 tall. What do I want to do here? So let's define a box that's our size of our viewport here. So I'm going to kind of make a box just to show you guys what I'm doing here. Here's our tool, and I'm going to make this thing. I'm going to draw a box like this in the screen. So here's our box. And the box, I don't want to have any kind of borders, just for a second. So our border is going to be 0. No border. And this is the fill of our box. We're going to make this, we're going to make this semi-transparent for a second. I'm going to make sure it's correct. So we're going to make this so it's like, instead of 100, we're going to make it 30%. So this is where our box is going to see, right? We're going to make this so it's 640 by 480, so it's the right size. So that is our viewport. And I want you to take a look at this for a second, guys, so you understand. Stephen, you too, right? So you can look at this. So here's our viewport. Let's assume this, right? And we want our viewport to start like this. So this is what we actually see. This is what's outside of our viewport that's hanging outside here, right? So as our ocean scrolls down, what you're going to do is you're going to move this thing so that the top of the box, the viewport, hits the top of the ocean. When it gets to here, when both the top of the viewport and the top of the ocean meet, reset. And it's going to reset the ocean to here again. Okay? So what is this location, this top left corner? What's the reset location for the ocean? Well, it's 1440 minus 480. Which I think is 960. And it's not positive 960 because this is off screen. This is negative 960 because it's way out here on the top of our screen. So that's our reset location. Okay, so let's program that in. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and I need to have a couple of methods. That means, right? I need one that's a private. Let's do some private methods here. Private methods. And we'll use that special way of doing our encoding, right? And this is going to be the private method for a reset. And this, what it does, it resets the ocean. It resets the ocean to y is equal to negative 960. That's what it does, right? That's every time the ocean falls. That's what it does. So that's what our ocean does, our reset. So we'll put in this, again, it's going to be a private function that we're going to use, right? So private, and we're going to call this this function reset. And we're going to call this reset function, as an example, it's also going to return void, so it's not going to return anything, right? It's going to call this method when it hits the bottom, all right? And I'm going to say when on reset, we're going to set our y, so this dot y is equal to negative 960. So it's going to be off the screen, right? So off screen. And again, I like these comments because it gives us an idea of what this, what our code is doing, right? It's almost like a little header for the code, right? Okay, cool. So that's one thing it can do. And we also need to have a public update function. We need to have that. So this private methods, we're going to put our public methods up here. So we're going to put our public methods. And up here, we're going to also say under public methods, you know, this is our update. So update method for ocean class. That's what this is. And underneath that, we're going to define it. We're going to say public update return void, right? And on update, what do we want this thing to do? We want it so that every frame, we want it to drop down a certain rate. Well, we don't have the rate to fall. I don't want to hard code it here. So what I want to do is up here before my constructor, I want to set some private instance variables. So here's our private. These are definitely private, not protected. So private instance variables. And this is above the constructor, so I put it in the wrong place, of course. Right here. Arg. Yarg. And then underneath that, we're going to call this thing, we're going to call this private underscore dy, right? So the change in y, right, is of type number, right? So we're gonna kind of keep track of how fast our motion is. We can call it dy, we can call it speed. There's different things we want to do, right? So our dy value is a number, right? And what we want to do is every update, first of all, I'm going to set the dy value here. So I'm going to say this dot underscore dy is equal to 5. So we'll say every update it moves 5 pixels. That's what it's going to do, right? And here on update, we're going to say this. We're going to say this dot y, right, is plus equal to this dot underscore dy. Right? So every frame, this is going to move down the screen, right? That's what it's going to do. And you know what? I might as well, since I've got the reset method down here, I might as well call the reset method in our constructor for the first time. So we're going to reset the thing in the beginning. This is almost going to position it. So we'll say this dot underscore reset. Okay, so we're going to reset. And notice how when I pulled it up, watch. This dot underscore reset, reset the ocean to y is at minus 60, right? I thought that would impress you, Stephen, but I guess I'm not impressed. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, I also want to do this. When in my update, I want to do a check bounds, right? I want to do I want to call a public method to check the bounds to make sure that that my ocean doesn't fall below. Like, you know, it's going to keep going forever. It's going to need to know when to reset. I need to reset when my x coordinate, right? My y coordinate is equal to 0. Right? My y coordinate starts off at minus 960. It rolls down until it hits the top of the screen. So right now it's minus 960. It's going to keep going up until the screen and the top right, top left corner match. So until when this is my if statement. If if y is greater than or equal to 0, reset. That's what I'm going to put in there, right? And that's what I'm going to do in my check bounds. So I'm going to call this as a private method, right? Then I'm going to call, you know, again, before after reset. So we're going to say like this. I'm going to say this. So we'll say check bounce checks to see if ocean needs to be reset, right? That's what that's going to do. And then, of course, we're going to call this private underscore check bounce. That's what it's going to do, check bounce. That's going to return, of course, void. This is a funny trick here. We're going to find out in a second. I'm going to say this. In my check bounds, I'm going to say if this dot y is greater than or equal to 0, right? That's going to be the condition for us to reset. Okay. This dot underscore reset. So that's when we're going to reset. We're actually going to reset everything in the check bounds method, right? So I'm not going to call the reset method in my update. I'm going to call the check bounds method. So I'm going to say one of these. This dot underscore check bounds. So if I've reached the bottom of my screen, I want to reset myself back up to the top. Okay, let's compile everything and see what happens. Let's try this out. Well, first of all, remember we're adding a new class called Ocean. So we have to do through that rigmarole. Let's do that now. So go to my index, and I want to do this above the scene. It doesn't have to be plane and ocean have nothing to do with each other, but around the same area as the plane is where I want to put it. So I'm going to kind of copy this and kind of put it in here, right? And let's call this ocean, different object, right? And then I'm going to go to my game.ts file, and again, around with the same place where my plane is, here's my reference. I want to kind of put in a reference to my ocean, let's say underneath. Okay, so there's my ocean. And now I want to instantiate my ocean in my game scene. Okay, so let's go back into my game scene, right? So I'm going to go into game.ts, but on the game side, which is my state side, which is here. Sorry, is my game class. And I need an object called ocean now, right? Now, it probably should be declared first because, remember, it stacks in order, right? In stacking order, display list order, right? The first object I add in is the back object, and then the other objects stack on top of it. So I'm going to say private underscore ocean is of type objects dot ocean, right? That's the first thing to give me my code hinting. And then before the plane is where I want to add the ocean. So I want to say this dot underscore ocean, right, is equal to new objects dot ocean. Okay, and then I want to add that to the screen. So I want to say this dot underscore add child, or sorry, this dot add child, this dot underscore ocean. There we go. So let's make some annotations here. So this is add ocean to scene. This one is add plane to scene. Right? It's pretty good. And then we're going to stage it. Right? Okay. Let's check this out and see if it works. Oh, wait, one more thing. On update, we also update the ocean. So we're going to say this dot underscore ocean dot update. If we don't update the ocean, that's a bad thing. It won't move. Right? Okay, cool. Let's check this out and see if it all works. I'll transpile everything first to make sure there's no errors. And now once we've got there's no errors, I'm going to go back into our local folder here, which is this one, and refresh. Okay, cool. I'm going to press start, and we should have a rolling ocean like this. What do you think, Stephen? Bored still? Okay. So we got our plane, and the ocean looks pretty good. I know I got to judge you, but judge everyone. Let's go back. I like the ocean, but I want to put it here too in my mail pilot start. Now that I've got my ocean, I can reuse it as part of my start screen, right? So let's do that. So let me add that into my menu scene. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio Code, and I want to go back to my menu scene. Let's double click. And in here, I have my mail pilot label, and I have my start button. But before that, I want to add a reference to my ocean. So I'm going to do the same thing. So here, I'm going to kind of go before in my instance variables. I'm going to go private underscore ocean is of objects dot ocean, right? Same idea, right? And exactly the same code, actually. I probably could copy and paste, right? But I'm not going to, just to show you guys again. So add ocean, and then we're going to say this dot underscore ocean. So I can just reuse this now, right? Is equal to a new objects dot ocean. You know, I'm getting really tired of using objects all the time. Objects dot this and objects dot that. It's killing me, man. Killing me. How do I change that? There's a way. It's always a way. This dot add child. This dot underscore ocean. Right. So I got my ocean. I'm almost ready. I need to add the update. Right. In update, there's nothing in there right now. I'm going to say this dot underscore ocean dot update. Right, now that I've got that done, I should have in the background of my menu a scrolling ocean on top underneath my buttons and my label. Let's try this out. So go back here and refresh. Uh-oh. Oh yeah, we have to transpile. So transpile, yay. Make sure we save, and we're going to go back here and refresh. MailPilot, right? We get a little start button, we get a little MailPilot. Maybe I want to make this a little larger. I think MailPilot needs to be a bit bigger. So instead of like 60, I need to make it 80, and maybe put it up there a little bit more. So I want some more room there. So I'll go back to this, where it says my MailPilot. I want to make it from 60 to 80 pixels, right? I think that's important for us to do. And instead of 320 by 480, 240, which is in the exact same center of the screen, I want to pull it back up to around 140. Another 100 pixels up. So let's try that. Transpile. There we go. And I want to go back to our scene here and refresh. Move that MailPilot. So making the text larger and moving it up. There it is. So a bit bigger and moving it up. Right now I click the game, so I start the game. This is where my main game is going. Right. All right. Let's do that. That's a great update. First, let's update to GitHub. So we're going to go back to here. And I'm going to go back to the GitHub scene. If you notice, there's all these things I need to update. I'm going to click on the button, which stages everything, and I'm going to say added ocean object, right? That's what we added, right? And then add that in. And then I'm going to go here and push, which is going to push up to GitHub. And when it's done pushing, I'm going to go back to Azure, and you can see it pretty much in a second. I'm going to refresh this, and you're going to see after it refreshes that MailPilot's up and running on Azure, right? So there you go. Start, everything's good. So see the flow, right? It's flowing pretty good to me. Like this is the kind of stuff that I want to see with you guys, right? Where we flow, we do our stuff, we start putting our things together, and we throw things on Azure as we go. We can see the live, almost like live development as you go, right? So when you guys hand in your concept, I want to see it here live, like ready to go. I want to see your stuff. This is a good opportunity for us to see a working level. I can test it out, and then I can go and take a look at it, right? Okay, I think we need a short break, and then do the washroom thing. I'll come and try and fix your problems, and then we'll get back and we'll add in our island and our cloud, and then we'll start adding. We'll mostly get everything done. We could probably get our score down and our colliders and everything done today. Okay, so let's just stop recording and we'll come back in a bit.